eventually if you follow it through. And they're determined to go through with this, and it's got full government backing,
yes,
as far as I understand.
It is a government bill.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
But also, you know, it's such emotive arguments that they're using. You know, we are going to help provide a cure for this disabled boy.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and other similar arguments. It really distorts the truth.
Yeah, and of course, if you're in that situation, if you're a relative of a disabled person, or a relative with somebody with an incurable disease at the moment, you're going to say, yeah, anything that that you want. But really, the facts, when you bring the facts into it, okay, try and move away from the emotions. There are no facts to back up what is being claimed.
And what's interesting as well is that these things are always peer-reviewed, and that means that if scientists come up with something, they will publish their findings, and other scientists will, you know, make comment on them, and so on. Now, alarmingly, in this country, even though animal-human hybrids has been discussed in Parliament, the authority over embryology, it's called the Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, they have issued a licence for some scientists to go ahead and create animal-human hybrid embryos already. So in this country, they actually already have been created.
Even though it's not legal? And yet they can do it?
Yes, they've gone ahead and done it, and they've said, well, the 1990 Act would have allowed this. And had animal-human hybrids been around at that time.
Right.
And these scientists issued their findings even before they've been peer-reviewed. To me, this shows that there's such a desire for them to, they want to use this kind of research. There's a motive there, because why else would they be pursuing something that doesn't produce any results?
Yeah. Are there any other aspects, before we start talking about what we should be doing with regard to this and its passage in the new session of Parliament, are there any other specific aspects of this bill that you want to bring out? I mean, that's obviously one of the big ones we've touched on. Are there other aspects?
Well, there's two that I'll quickly say, and the third one is abortion. But abortion isn't in the bill, but it allows the Abortion Act to be amended. So they basically say you can change abortion law through this bill.
Right.
That's quite a big one in itself.
We'll come back to abortion in just a minute as well, yes.
But the other two is something called Save Your Siblings, which is analysing or looking at embryos and choosing one that is genetically similar to an existing child, brother or sister, so basically so that you have a genetical match. You can take tissue from that matching baby and use it to implant into the sick child, so that the healthy tissue helps the child to get better. That's called Save Your Siblings. And obviously, I've touched on it a little bit before, but obviously that goes against, you know, God creates us for a purpose. Yes. And what are we doing to these children, creating them for man's purpose? Yes. And, you know, what strain will this put on a family that when the child finds out, oh, I was only created, it's not like you really wanted me. Yes. You created me to help somebody else. It wasn't because of me that I was born, you know. I think it's a strange situation.
It is that area, isn't it? I mean, again, because the emotive argument, and I'm sure we've all seen the interviews on TV with the child, and you know, if we could do this, we could save our child, and we've seen the interviews. But what you say? What will it put upon that other child, that child that's created, not out of love, but just, you know, out of, you know, to deal with this? What you know some of the emotional problems that children have just to find when they've been adopted, let alone when they've just been created. Yeah. I mean, and we have no idea until that works through, of course. We have, and then it's all too late, isn't it? Yeah. And so we've got to deal with these issues now before we start, otherwise it will all be too late.
Yeah. Yeah. The last issue is really to do with IVF, and there's several things shooting off of this, but to summarise, it will be huge social reform, because it will say that children created with IVF don't need a father. Therefore, this opens the door to same-sex couples having their own children, or having children that is of one of them, you could possibly use genetic information from the other. I won't go into that. Also saying that children born in this way that their father doesn't need to be registered on their birth certificate. So their birth certificate will be a legal fiction. They'll be created through, I know it's complicated, they'll be created through IVF.
So my eyes glazed over at that point, didn't you?
So to create a child, you need sperm, you need a man.
Yes.
You also need the egg of a woman. But the father doesn't have to be on the birth certificate that's given to the child.
Right.
His name will be held back in a registry, and when the child's 18, they can have the name if they want it.
If they want it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it just sends off lots of alarm bells, thinking about the child itself not knowing its father. Yes. Also, if we have lots of children who are IVF children, they don't know their own genetic background.
That's right.
They don't know who their potential brothers and sisters are right there.
Right.
What does that do to the individual? What does it also do when they're choosing a partner?
Yeah.
And that whole issue of the family unit is completely redefined, because we're saying two mothers, another woman can be the second parent, or another man can be the second parent, completely redefining the family. And that will have huge social impacts on our society that people aren't really, politicians don't seem bothered about.
So what we've got to look at with this bill is, I think, is number one, the first aspect that we mentioned very clearly is totally going against God's plan, God's will, and we have no idea what it really will lead to if any of these embryos are allowed to continue and grow, etc. So that very much. The other two issues, interestingly, are things really that are concerning the future. We talked about this earlier on. It's not just what affects me today, but what will affect our children. And we need to be concerned, especially for those children. What will it do for them? What sort of problems will they face? How will they face coming to know the Lord? Who is the Lord that let me do this? So there are real far-reaching issues, isn't it, with this bill, that in actual fact the repercussions of it probably won't be known until the next generation.
I know, it's so awful, and we are working towards making amendments to this bill, but really our prayer is for the bill just to be completely thrown out of Parliament, because it's an abomination to God, and that's no exaggeration.
Yes.
And it's in its final stages in the House of Commons. As I mentioned earlier, it was supposed to be finished in the Commons in July, but through a series of events it was postponed until October, when the House will sit again after summer recess. So we don't know the exact date of when it will...
We've got the timetable yet.
But when that comes out, we'll know.
So is it the second reading or the third reading?
It's the third reading, and then there's a report stage.
Yes.
In this time, amendments can still be made, and we've been looking at the amendments, and we've just... we're finalising an updated information pack, which we will be sending out to people who are on our list. So if you want to be on our list, go to our website. ccfon.org. That's right.
And ask for the update information list. Yes.
Well, we'll be, as soon as you sign up for that,
if you're on the list, you'll
when
get
it's
it.
ready to go out, we'll be sending it out. And that will help people to get in touch with their MPs, to talk to people in their church, just generally to communicate about it, because it is a tricky bill. It's so complicated, and there's many, many other aspects of it. But as I was mentioning earlier, it does come down to some fundamental truths.
Yes.
Do we believe that human life is,
sacrosanct? Is it from God? Yes.
Yeah, we do. So therefore we're against any combination of animals and humans.
That's right.
We're against children not knowing their fathers.
That's right.
And we're against children being used as a commodity to be born solely to, cure somebody else. So it does come down to quite basic principles. And as you were saying earlier, for people to communicate this in a way, in something that is close to their heart, So
to think through, you have made it clear, thank you, Simone, and to think through the issues that you have just said very clearly, and if any of you have missed it and want that pack or that, make contact with us, ring up the office. I will make sure the office tomorrow has Simone's detail on the website, which you can get that from. So do get hold of